Well, good morning.
Good morning.
My name's Taylor. I'm with Heritage Memorial Funding, and I've got my counterpart with me, Austin Runnels. We're going to talk about a few things today, but the main point of today's presentation is payment policies, insurance assignments, and cash flow, and what you should know about it. I want to tell you about the role that we play in the funeral business, the industry we serve, or the industry we participate in, and all the good, bad, and ugly that comes around talking about cash flow and insurance assignments and all the ins and outs there. A little bit about us. So again, Taylor and Austin, we are normal people. When I thought funeral business, before I got into this industry, I thought it's like, oh, those are people, I don't know them personally, but they seem so odd. But it turns out they're normal people just like I was before I got into the business. So that was refreshing to know once I got to build relationships in the business. But we serve funeral homes all over the country. We're from Tupelo, Mississippi. We've got an office staff there that deals with folks from as far west right now as Phoenix, Arizona. We serve funeral homes in Buffalo, New York, and then South Florida, just outside of Miami. So a little country town, Mississippi, deals with folks from all over the country. But we'll talk more about that. So Heritage Memorial Funding, we are a family-owned business, and we participate in a industry that is funeral assignment funding or insurance assignment funding. So we deal with a lot of insurance companies on a day-to-day basis. We work with somewhere around 800 different companies, and that can be for all different types of insurance policies. If they make it and sold it to somebody that's ever used it in a funeral home, we have dealt with it. But we specialize in a type of insurance assignment funding that is non-recourse, like other of our competitors out there. And that is a service that helps funeral homes alleviate the pains of dealing with insurance payments. So a family walks in the door, wants to use a life insurance policy for payment for services. We take that out of their hands, allow them to focus on the service that the family wants and all the arrangements so that they can get what they paid for. And we deal with all the headache of filing and guaranteed payment to the funeral home so that they can make sure that their books at the end of the day are balanced and they have no receivables left out there owed. Again, that helps, that alleviates the headache of the funeral homes, as well as makes the experience the family sees a whole lot smoother and seamless. So who do we serve? Heritage, again, funeral homes are number one. We serve more independents out there than anything. Let's see, Angela was telling me there's some new folks here that are fairly new to the funeral business, and then some folks that have been around for a little bit. But of course, there are more independents than there are corporates out there. But we also serve cemeteries, crematories, or basically anybody that can take a life insurance policy or any type of insurance as a form of payment to the funeral home. So a funding company, or what we refer to as just a funding company, and that can be confused for a lot of different things, but basically from start to finish, we, working with funeral homes, we take the report of the death, call the insurance company, we make sure that they've got everything that they need to get the claim started. We make sure all the legal hoops, is probably the best way to put it, are met, and that we are helping the funeral home jump through so that if there's more difficult cases, which we'll get to in a little bit, that we follow whatever rules and laws that are in place for the protection of the families and the folks that are selling the insurance or accepting them for policies, for payment. But we verify that the assignments are good. So does everybody know what an insurance assignment is? Nobody. Perfect. That's what I wanted. So an insurance assignment, when a family comes in with a life insurance policy and they say, hey, I want to take my $5,000 worth of paper and pay for that $5,000 service, that funeral home legally can take that policy and on assignment. So that family's going to say, okay, I'm going to sign this over to you as payment for the service. That funeral home's going to take it, sign off on it, mail it over to the insurance company, and the insurance company basically looks like that as a check payable to the funeral home for whatever legal binding agreement that they sign. That's a way for the family can pay for these without having to come out of pocket and have to pay for cash, use credit card, or come up with other ways to take payment of the services. So that's what it's called, is an insurance assignment. Banks can do them for lending reasons. There's a lot of different reasons that a life insurance policy can be taken on assignment, but what we're talking about is just for the funeral service. What companies like Heritage, funding companies, what we do is we get in and we verify that those policies are good. Because if somebody walks into your business, your funeral home, and says, hey, this policy is worth $5,000, you can't just take them for their word, especially this day and age. You got to make sure that it is legitimate, that you've got all the necessary signatures that you need to make sure that this turns into cash for you, for your business. And that's what companies like ours do. We go out there and we're the middleman between the funeral home and the insurance company. We confirm that we've got the right people signing the documents. We've confirmed that we're following their rules, that we're following state laws, so that does in turn get the funeral home paid. Because when you're dealing with insurance and the filing process for that, it's not an easy process. Most insurance companies take anywhere from 45 to 90 days on average to pay out a claim. So you can imagine if you went through and rushed through some paperwork to fill out a form to get paid, it's going to take you 45 to 90 days to get paid on the back end from the insurance company. If it's not right, you could easily rush through it and just skip out a lot of stuff that could cost you in the end. Not necessarily, it could cost you in time, but it also could cost you even getting paid at all if you don't follow their rules. But we make sure all those requirements are met. Our types of companies would advance funds to the funeral home. So being that we get a verification of the policy, those companies will jump in and say, okay, funeral home, hey, I can get you paid for $5,000 today, so you can go ahead and have that service tomorrow, instead of you, the funeral home, having to worry about filing and keeping your fingers crossed that you'll get paid on the back end. And then after follow-up, funding companies will file the claims, so they'll follow the insurance policies, make sure death certificates are mailed off at appropriate time so that they can get paid on the back end. Funding companies are in place to make sure that they're alleviating the headache, the paperwork process, all the filing that an office staff would do or that a funeral director would do in between meeting with families. So all the phone calls and all the follow-up and all the runaround, they would alleviate that. So let's talk about insurance assignments. So we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, but let's start with the good. So an insurance assignment, if handled correctly, there's no cost for the funeral home to accept that as a form of payment. To use a funding company, there's no cost. There's no out-of-pocket cost for the families. Beneficiaries often pay nothing for a funeral. They're the beneficiary of a policy. It was the insured of the deceased at this point that paid the premiums on it. Insurance assignments, some funeral homes, especially ones that have had bad experiences, will, I guess, they'll prefer other payments instead of insurance assignments if they've not had the best experiences. But insurance, families treat these like gift cards. Has anybody ever gotten a gift card for Christmas or a birthday or something, and you go to the store and it had $25 on there, but you wind up spending $50, maybe $75. You go above and beyond what's on there because that was kind of like free money to an extent. You can go get what you really want. Families look at insurance as this, so the beneficiaries do, so they can get the service that they're looking for. So insurance can be a headache to file, 100% headache to file. But if a funeral home has the right measures in place, it can actually mean more bottom line revenue for their business. Insurance is easy for families to secure. If they don't use insurance, they gotta have cash, credit, a pre-need, something along those lines. But insurance is easier to secure than any kind of credit or any kind of lending that may be an option. So if they don't have it, it's convenient for the family and funeral home, again with the correct measures in place. And one of the big things that eliminates stress and disputes among family members. So where if you've got a family that is wanting to pay cash and they're having to split that cost up amongst, say, 5 children, you could bet that they're not going to have a quick and easy conversation of who's going to pay what and when and how somebody else is going to repay another person. Accepting that, insurance on assignment eliminates all that, a simple signature, and the funeral home can move on with their arrangements. So let's talk about the bad. Bottom line, if you were to ask me about insurance assignments, it is risky business, especially for a funeral home. Funeral directors and their owners don't get in business to be accounts receivable people. It's time consuming and tedious. We'll get into some examples later of claims that have taken, I think we looked at the one the other day, it was almost 5 years now. We're still trying to get collection on it. We'll talk about those examples. But for funeral homes, especially ones that are not using an assignment company, there's no guarantees on the verification. So if I call insurance company A, and I say, hey, this family brought me this policy. It says $5,000. They said it's good. What do y'all think at the insurance company? They'll say, oh yeah, it may be good. This, and this. Give you some details. Well, there is no guarantee for your business or your bank account until you get a check in hand and signed over and it deposits in your account without bouncing or without having any kind of issues on the deposit there. So it can be risky. Delayed payment, I've given you the example already. We've got worst case scenario, one that's dragging out nearly 5 years. Typically, again, 45 to 90 days, depending on the insurance company you're dealing with, assuming you get your death certificates in on time. Not talking about other complications that may be estate related or just simple family squabbles can delay this as a form of payment for the funeral home. Mistakes. So the human element, if you've ever been through any business or and I think fast food when I think of mistakes. There's so many, it seems like you go through McDonald's and it's difficult for them to get an order right a lot of the times. It's probably the way I sound through the microphone, it messes it up, but mistakes are made. So when you're dealing with an insurance company, you're dealing with a call center in Nebraska, in Nashville, you're dealing with folks that are paid hourly to answer the phones and talk to you about stuff that they're reading on the computer. And if you've done any time reading numbers or looking at call volume where they get so many hundreds of calls a day, mistakes are going to be made no matter who you are or how important your situation is. To them, it's just another service that they're looking at or a phone call that they're getting over the phone. Difficult scenarios. So other things where that will affect insurance assignments, especially the payout, it's going to be estate cases. Something I didn't add here is divorces. That will make play a role in it. Of course, contestable policies. Does everybody know what a contestable policy is? It's a policy that's within the contestable period of the insurance, with the insurance company, typically 2 years that you'll see. That will keep you from getting paid. Pending DCs. Angela, do y'all talk much about the forensics office in Jackson and what they're doing? Right now, if you call down to Jackson, the forensics office, and you ask them, hey, what's your turnaround right now on this shit, especially criminally related, they'll tell you at least 12 months before you get that back. Well, guess what? If you took an insurance assignment on a policy and you've got to have that death certificate to get paid, it's going to be 12 months before you can get the death certificate. Well, the family walks in, it's a good policy. This $5,000 policy is good, but it's going to be a year before you can get the death certificate, before you can even start the filing process. So that's something else to throw out there. And these are just some examples. We'll get into some more specifics. But insurance companies. So some of my best friends in the industry work for insurance companies. The way that they make money is they bring money in. The more money they pay out, the less money they're going to make. So they find ways to push through their claims, whether it's claim forms, whether it's technicalities. If somebody didn't complete a claim form correctly, they find ways to avoid payout. Nobody will ever tell you that. But the longer they keep the money, the more money they're making. And then constantly evolving and changing rules and legislation that affect the disbursement of proceeds. Federal laws, state laws can affect what takes place before they will pay you. Some states like North Carolina, they have a 14-day rule where they have to get payout, otherwise interest is paid, but not every state does that. So claims that are filed from residents in North Carolina, they're apt to get them paid quickly, but like in Mississippi, there's nothing to require them to pay immediately. DC is probably your biggest holdup there. So here's an example, simple example. We're looking at funeral home A and B. Funeral home B has a insurance assignment company in place that handles all their insurance receivables for their business. Funeral home A does not. When you're dealing with a company, and it doesn't have to be, it can be a mom and pop that just opened, or this can be an established company that does thousands of calls a year, the difference in operating capital week to week is a huge difference between the two businesses. So if you're on A, there's no funding company in place, they're on a 45 to 90-day turnaround before they can get paid. But all their vendors require them to be paid within 30 days, so they're on a net 30 there. Well, they've only got an operating capital of $10,000 because they're limited on what pays. They're at the mercy of the insurance company to get them paid so they can get their vendors paid. So they've got $50,000 sitting on the books in insurance receivables. A company that uses an assignment, funeral home that uses an assignment company is working in the positive has very few receivables, if any at all, and a lot more operating capital. Again, keep in mind, the cost for funeral homes and cemeteries to use a funding company is zero if they handle it correctly. So some of the examples we talked about, heritage. Again, we're dealing with hundreds of funeral homes and thousands of insurance assignments on a yearly basis. We have a weekly accounts receivable meeting. This is just a snapshot of what we deal with. This is in this example, there's only 9 pages on this report, but this is what we deal with weekly. I want to go through step by step here and look at these different assignments that we're dealing with in cases where the funeral home has already been paid, the family had the service they wanted, but we're dealing with on the back end, protecting the funeral home from having to do this themselves. So number one up there, I've underlined the hot topic on it, but this at this point we've filed, we've gotten a death certificate, we've gotten everything to the insurance company, and they're telling us allow 30 days to process. You see the age at the top right? This claim's 48 days old. We had the funeral home paid 48 days ago, and the insurance company's telling me that another 30 days before I can be paid back in what we do. So if that goes like I want it to, it's going to be 78 days before I get payment back on that. If you're dealing with a business where you've got, let's say for example, you had 5 services Monday through Friday, and each day you took an insurance assignment for $10,000 for a service, you've got $50,000 tied up in a 5-day period. And you've got an insurance company telling you it's going to be 78 days before you can get paid. And you've got $50,000 tied up in that one case. That would put you out of business in a hurry. Number 2, here's an example where I've got a claim that's 95 days old. Insurance company, I had a full receivable of $6,300 for a service. Insurance company paid me everything but $868. In a lot of cases, you may only have $868 tied up in profit for your service. In this case, it's already 95 days old, and they mailed my check to Timbuktu, to somebody else's address. That's another example where the funeral home doesn't have to worry about it, that they're protected from that. Even the family doesn't have to worry about it. But now we're carrying this, and we're fighting the insurance company and the issue there. And then this bottom one, this one is only for $1,700. It's 122 days old. And I've underlined the reason here. We're waiting on toxicology results to come back so that they can amend the DC so we can get it filed. So that was just being drug out. Now, this is the one I really like to show folks. This is what the families don't understand, the insurance side of stuff. They think, hey, I gave you guys the funeral director. Remember, I handed you that policy. I had a service 2 days later, 3 days later. I'm done with it. Here's where funeral homes are left on the hook. So this top example, you see the age of it, 304 days. This is one that I had a service for $5,300, $5,335. The insurance company told us, yeah, that'll cover, this policy is good for $5,335, and we got everything but $4,985 out of it. I'm at a year now from that, and it's actually been longer than that now, but at this point, I'm 340 days out. And that it's whoever on the phone we spoke to that guaranteed us that this policy was good. We don't know what they were looking at. Could have had a bad day. They may have had the wrong file brought up. But we're coming out to dry on them. The next example, it's 171 days old. This insurance company did not disclose that there was another assignment on file. I was looking at the amount. This was the family had saw 2 different things. It was I think this was a transfer from another state. They had transferred the body. This funeral home or cemetery was using a funding company. They got their portion, but by the time it come down to the funeral home that we were servicing, they didn't disclose that there was another assignment on file. And when you're dealing with an insurance company, time and date stamps mean everything. So just because the family brought the same policy that they used in, say, New York or wherever this example was, doesn't mean that there are not going to be errors. So when we called in, they didn't disclose that, and I guess they beat us by a day. But when we sent this assignment in, there was already one sitting there, and they didn't disclose it to us, and it cost us the difference. It wasn't much, but we were told it was going to cover $43.97. Obviously, it left us a balance of $130 out there, and that again is something that our types of companies protect funeral homes from. This last one, Where was that? Oh, I didn't bring that. I thought I brought the example of the almost 5-year one. We'll talk about that one. This example, 130 days, insurance company mailed the payment to the family. So even though we fill out, or funeral home fills out the paperwork like they're supposed to for filing, again, the mistakes that can be made, the insurance company, the claims reps, they just misread stuff, send payment where they think it goes. And so we were still having to deal with the insurance company on chasing down an additional $1,100 owed on that one. And when you're dealing with a $3,400 service, that may be more than the profit side of it. The other example I thought I brought, but we didn't. It's approaching 5 years now. It was a case where the insurance company did not disclose that there was a loan on the policy, and we didn't know anything about it. We've been going 5 years now. The insurance company, it was going to cost us more to go to court with them, to fight them, so we worked out a payment arrangement with the family. I think we're doing $10 a month to get her, have her pay us back, and we allowed that at our expense. The insurance company screwed up. At the same time, we protected the funeral home. The funeral home got their payment, knows nothing about it besides what conversations we've had. But just another example where a company like Heritage jumped in, saved the day as far as the funeral home is concerned, and allows the family to work out something. Because without it, the funeral home would have been the one left out, or potentially would have been the one that had to chase the family and take them to court to sue them for the difference. So let's talk about the ugly. We just showed some examples of how bad it could be for funeral homes if they're doing it themselves, or even the assignment companies. So what's at stake? When you think about things that are at stake as a funeral director, or as operating a business, if it's your own business one day, or if you're managing for someone, number one is your reputation. If your reputation is that you always take care of your families, but you now get overwhelmed with paperwork or insurance, or maybe it's just your business growing, you don't want simple mistakes or things that can be avoided come back to bite you and disparage your reputation that's out there. The other thing is time is money, so time is at stake. If I would say most of the operations that we serve have anywhere between 3 and 5 employees, time is important. They don't have time to be stuck on hold with the insurance companies. We spend 40 hours a week in office, and we spend, I don't know, 75% of that time probably on hold with the insurance company, not being productive, because we're just, there's so much out there, and there's not enough folks to take the call. It's too costly for them to have that without it costs going up. But time is important. Relationships are important. We talked about the examples where there's money owed still for cost of the funeral service. You have to protect your relationships as a funeral director and a funeral home in your community. The last thing you want to do is go knocking on doors, being a bill collector. It's hard to imagine knocking on somebody's door saying, hey, you owe me $1,000. Yeah, I know we already had the conversation that your service was paid for with that sign, but it turns out there was a mistake and it's not. Now you owe me $1,000. But the next service or the next death of your family, please come use my funeral home. You can imagine that that's not a fun conversation for somebody, for a funeral director, for a funeral home owner to have. Litigation. So say you've got a family that doesn't want to pay their debt. That will happen. If you haven't seen that yet, that will be part of the day-to-day business. You want to put things in place to help you be protected from that. Litigation right now, our attorney was telling me on the low end, you can hire an attorney for about $150 an hour. On the high end, depending on your area or your situation, somewhere about, around $350 an hour. In some of our examples, you can imagine how far, like there was a few examples we had that was about $1,000 that was owed on a funeral service. How many hours are you going to get out of $1,000 to make it worthwhile? Where's the tipping scale on that? It won't be long. It'll be less than a full day's amount of work. You would have paid an attorney more to go try to collect from the insurance for the family for the $1,000 they owed you than it's worth you paying him. A lot of cases we find that clients that are, before they're clients of ours, they would write this balance off, and that affects the bottom line at the end of the year. Collections, we talked about that, just general collections. Nobody wants to be a bill collector. And then we talked about the example of cash flow. Cash flow will kill you. We see businesses coming in and out every single year. They don't have the cash flow to continue to operate. And it's not their mistake, I mean, it's not their fault, it's just the nature of the beast. You're dealing with insurance, most of it does not pay quickly. So let's talk about what makes a good assignment company, things to look for. So like any funeral home or like any funeral director, not everything's created equally, so you need to know what to look for. Look for reputable companies. In this day and age, it's easy to get on Google, check Google reviews. The best thing I recommend is just word of mouth. Ask your peers. Find out what their experience has been. Look for folks that don't want to stick you in any kind of long-term contract. Look for a company that's got a simple fee structure. Don't fall for the flashy, misleading introductory rate and get stuck in something later. Look for true non-recourse options. That's protection for the funeral home. That's somebody that's willing to be a partner, that if something goes wrong on the assignment or the insurance payout, that they will handle the liability for you and you won't have to pay it back. Because at that point, you're doing nothing than borrowing money. And that when you get in that relationship, it can be a cycle that will basically cost you your business. Look for somebody that gives you multiple payment options, including beneficiary funds. So if there's remaining amounts of the policy, that they have options to pay to the family directly. And that's an option out there. There are some companies that do offer it, some that do not. Look for the ones that will be willing to offer advance, not just for what the funeral home needs for the cost of the services, but maybe the family wants to fly in family members from out of state, or they want to do extra things at the cemetery or buy a larger headstone that the funeral home wouldn't normally cash advance to them. There's companies out there that will offer that direct payment directly to the family. Look for a company that incorporates technology. At the end of the day, we're doing nothing but pushing paper, signing with signatures. But to make your process easier, look for things that they have in place to make everything easier for you in the whole process. Look for a company that's flexible. It's easy for somebody to say, hey, this is a guaranteed issue policy, it's going to pay out no matter what you say, as long as you can prove the person's dead. But that's not always the easy cases you'll see. We talked about the estate cases. We talked about examples of death certificates being pending and drug out, or maybe complicated scenarios. Look for a company that is willing to work with you no matter what. Look for companies that are easy to work with. Number one is, I recommend somebody regional, somebody that understands how your state operates, somebody that understands what you experience in your community. Somebody that answers the phone. The last thing you want to do, and I get tired of it dealing with insurance companies, is to call somebody and get stuck on the line on eternal hold or through an automated phone tree that's not easy to navigate. And then look for folks that are friendly. You will begin to learn if you don't, once you get into funeral home, relationships with vendors will be some of the best, most valuable things that you can have. Not just in, we talk about everything from insurance assignments to who to go call for caskets, or what I saw out in the field when we were visiting these folks, and it's just, they're all vendors, even on our side, even though we are a vendor, are great resources. And then lastly, read the fine print. Do not sign anything before you read through and through so that you know that what you're signing up for. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Austin. He's going to talk to you guys, and we're going to tie in all right, we talked about insurance and the headache involved. He's going to tell you about the payment policies and other forms of payment.
You got cash, credit card, insurance with your pre-arrangements, third-party financing, and checks. So, you know, a couple of issues with each of those. Cash, you know, a lot of the families don't just have $5,000, $10,000 sitting there. You know, so, and even, I mean, it happens, but when it does happen, funeral directors, they have to handle that. You know, you have to be the one risking getting hit over the head, taking it to the bank, you know, so that's, you know, it's nice to have cash, but sometimes that's not always the best option. As far as credit cards, there are always processing fees. Families got to pay interest on that, so, you know, that's just even more money. And then as far as your insurance and pre-arrangements, you know, for funeral homes, it is a headache to have to deal with that. As he was talking, you know, you've got to go through and handle these insurance companies, and it takes away so much time from your day. So that's where, you know, we come into play. And then as far as third-party processing, you know, a lot of people don't get approved for loans, you know, because if you don't have the credit for that, you're just out of luck. And then lastly, a check. You know, you can write a check real quick, and There are no funds. You know, that thing will bounce like a ball. So it's really important to have a payment policy in place, you know, for your funeral home. You know, when families come in, they're going through a lot. You have to be there for them. So it's good to have a clear and consistent payment requirement and forms of payment, just spelled out. It makes it easier to talk with them about the families, and it leaves no options for forms of payment that you don't want. IOUs or monthly payments, because a lot of times they're going to fall through on that. And it keeps your staff, having that in place, it keeps your whole entire staff, in place. So if you've got several people helping these families that, get the funds that they need, it's good to have that clear.
I'm going to interject here. So we've got a client on the coast. It's got 7 locations, and they got a team. I'm trying to think how many actual folks. They've got a staff of well over 20 folks, and in 7 locations with 3-4 services a day going through those, trying to keep their team on the same page about what's accepted, what's not. Just insurance alone is a handful for us to deal with at times. When they're super busy, they're calling in constantly with all kind of questions. When it comes down to payment policies, this is the biggest thing that we see funeral homes fall through with. There's too many funeral homes that lead with this and not this. It's tough when you see a family come in and they're not in the best place. Something tragic's happened, and you have to talk to them about how you're going to pay for what you're getting. I don't know a funeral home. There may be one out there. I don't know a funeral home that works off work as a nonprofit. Is there anybody here that's willing to work 40 hours a week and take home 25% of what they earn? I'm not. Having this in place, it seems so easy, but you'll find yourself, if you're meeting with the family, it'll be hard to talk about. So having something like this, training your staff, training yourself what to talk about, and he'll go into more options later, will save you a lot of headache on the back end. But we see that as cases that will put folks out of business every single day.
And a lot of times, next we're going to talk about, these are just some examples of payment policies. But looking at this, you have options. Here you've got quite a few, but here just three options that you can choose from. There's not much to think about as far as that, but going through these, they've got it all spelled out. Cash, personal checks, just other options, but they go into detail when they talk about the life insurance policies, the fees that are involved in that. They have to spill all of that out and be able to spell it out for them. So yeah, it's good to be able to have those options for your people, just to pick which one's the best for them.
And I'm going to point out 2 things here. On both of these examples, both of them accept credit card here, but there's no processing fee included. So you're looking at credit card processing fees can be anywhere from 2.5% to 4% plus, depending on who you're dealing with. That's just coming off your bottom line. So keep that into account. You can see they're adjusting for any kind of processing fee with the insurance to cover their staff charges, because they understand the length of time it'll take to get them paid, and the convenience included for the family. So the families understand that, but there's nothing here. So I think that's a hole in their policy here, that they're not covered for the cost unless they mark it up somewhere else. So just pay attention to that, because what you leave out here, the family's going to leave out too. And you come to the end and say, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you about my processing fee for this or that, or I didn't include this, and GPL and all that, and you've got to list some of those things. Some states, and there's a reminder we've got later, for certain state laws, some states don't allow you to push credit card processing fees out, so you'll want to do your homework on that, make sure you're following law.
And another thing that I think is important too, just to spell out, it needs to be taken care of before we have the service. Just so that the families are aware of that.
I've seen some. So the example on the left shows you, was it 2 business days before, and I've seen folks have it at least 30 days out, or no later than 30 days out. I think setting an expectation to have everything paid for on the front end is the best expectation to have, because you're going to have some that want to run over.
So when dealing with families, it's important to display it and discuss it. Just have it right there for them to see, spelled out. You must know the funeral laws. They're always changing, as Taylor hit on earlier. You've got to know that. Every state's different as far as certain things. But just, have your payment options displayed, on your desk or, in the planning room. And, be sure to set expectations and just let your family know that, up front what you need and what is expected of them. And don't let pricing be the last thing that you talk about. Go ahead and get that out of the way, square that up, and then, talk about other things that are important.
And the funeral business seems to be one of the last ones out there that are not requiring folks to pay up front. It's kind of interesting. You go anywhere else, you go to the grocery store, you go pump gas now, you're not taking anything home before you pay for it. And so it's slowly turning. Seems like in the deep south is where we see most of it. Some of the folks that are still letting folks out the door without securing any kind of payment up front, which is crazy, but let's go.
So have that out there so that they can see it. Okay, and just to review, number 1, establish a payment policy. Number 2, display your payment policy. Set expectations with your families. Know all of the risks that are involved. Find a funding company that is reputable, that does what they say they're going to do. And, build a relationship with that funding company because you will work very close with them. Our clients, when we reach out to them, we call them a couple times a day just to keep them updated on things, and it makes it a whole lot easier to have a relationship with them. And, and a lot of times, we'll steer you. If we see something that's going to go south, we'll let you know and warn you of that. So, it's always good to have in any kind of business relationship, a good relationship. So.
You're probably familiar with these. We just threw up resources. Is everybody from Mississippi? No? Where are you from? Tennessee? Okay. Cool. Somebody, did I hear another no? Just one from Tennessee?
Tennessee.
Cool. Angela, have y'all ever had anybody from Arkansas come through? Okay. I wasn't familiar. I wasn't sure. But cool. We got clients in Tennessee. Is everybody working in funeral home right now? Okay. Where are you at in Tennessee? Okay, yeah, I know them. I forget the guy's name. We had a contact over there. Anyway, won an iPad from us when we went to the national last year before last. It was like, of all the people that showed up to this national convention, it's like, he was the one to get the iPad.
It was Mark Smith.
Huh?
It was Mark Smith.
There you go. So,
He must have talked about that.
Yeah, I think that was Myrtle Beach, maybe.
All right.
We'll leave it open. We went over a bunch of information. If you got questions, comments, please see us. Any obvious questions out there?
I got a few.
No?
Verifying problems, like, I've seen it at our funeral home. Insurance company doesn't want to talk to you, they want to talk to the client.
Yeah.
What do you do in that situation?
Well, depends on what situation you're in. If you're handling on your own, because the rules we play by are going to be a little bit different because we've got the relationships in place with those insurance companies. Also, the wording in our assignment documents allow us to have a limited power of attorney in those cases. And some of our experience allows us to get in there. And we had to push back some. Again, when you're dealing with the insurance company, they are trained to talk to and protect client information. And so they're going to do so. If possible, you get the family on the phone, obviously, and try to do a three-way call. That's my number one go-to. So if you don't want to talk to me, then you're going to have to tell the family why you don't want to deal with the person that they're asking you to deal with. So that's my go-to. Now, if you've got, again, it can get kind of hairy here. If you're doing like an employer claim, those can get difficult, where you've got an employer that's uneducated about what role you're playing in the payment process of the insurance assignment. You could be dealing with like Veterans Affairs. So there's some VA policies. We see a lot of them out of Florida, not so much in Mississippi. If you're around long enough, you'll see some, but those policies are not assignable. There are pension policies issued in Mississippi that are unassignable, and there's nothing you can do in those cases. My recommendation, connect with a funding company that knows the ins and outs, and they'll tell you real quick, yeah, is this something that they're just giving you the runaround on because they think it's fun, or are you really up against something that you're not going to get anywhere with? But you've got our contact info. If anybody runs across anything, you don't have to be an existing client. Y'all can call us and say, hey, we're dealing with this. Is this something y'all also see? We'll be happy to help. What else?
What's the cost of the funeral home?
So for our business, it's a 4% fee that we charge, a percentage of the assigned amount. That's the fee that we put in there, but it can be listed like anything else, like, because it's passed to the family. So the family, it comes out of the assigned amount, zero cost for the funeral home. And that is the same thing that can be done. It's not just Heritage, it's all companies out there that you can do that with. So when you get flowers or you ask for police escorts, if you're having to pay for those things, you pass it, list it as a line item on the funeral bill, and all that cost gets passed. And of course, the offhand advantage for the funeral home is guaranteed payment, cash up front.
So are you saying that you can pass that 4% on to the family?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
you're out of no money.
Say it again.
So you're out of no money.
The funeral home, that's right. Yep, it's a wash for the funeral.
Okay. And then like if your face value, like $100,000 policy, y'all paying $15,000 to the funeral?
Yep.
Do y'all collect the other and send it to the family?
We can do both options. We talked about advancing funds to the beneficiary. If they want anything advanced, there's a fee associated with that. If they do not want, we still do the filing, and the insurance company will process their payment. At the same time, it would come back to my company.
So this is a process that we would start by the funeral home itself coming and starting and drawing a contract up with y'all. And,
Well-
and the family would really only be talking to y'all or dealing with if there were outstanding.
Rarely, yeah.
Rarely.
We
Like those cases that you showed us, anything outstanding that maybe wasn't included in the policy, that
That's right.
4%, something like that.
We operate behind the curtain. Yeah, and rarely will we get involved with the family, because typically the funeral home, we won't want to get involved with that relationship. Now, there are cases where funeral homes say, yes, they know who you are, please call them, contact them. If it's anything on the filing on the backside, sometimes the insurance company will tell us, oh, we need a photo ID. We'll contact you and get that. Yeah, in most cases, it's our simple paperwork, funeral home or funeral directors, office staff initiates it, gets them signed, and then communicates with us the whole time. So, we try to make it seamless. Anything else? Cool, we get. What time are y'all supposed to get out?
Well, 12:45, but I'm gonna walk you out, and
Yeah.
we're gonna come back and talk about pre-needs.
There you go.